Hi, I'm Steve Lentini, and I'm your host for Different Thinking for Different Times, Season 4, Episode 15. I like to start with a quote, and here's one from Albert Einstein. That deeply emotional conviction of the presence of a superior reasoning power, which is revealed in the incomprehensible universe, forms my idea of God. The incomprehensible universe. And, humans have the hubris and the ego to think that we know it all. Now, of course, we have to manage life on Earth, but we've been very small minded for a long time. And even more so recently, I think maybe even we've regressed. We think like the superior reasoning power. Can you imagine? That created an incomprehensible universe. We think like God. And so we go around making others wrong, whole groups of people, different cultures, different political ideologies, people who think differently. And we think that is thinking like a superior reasoning power that created an incomprehensible universe. It created it. Think about that. There was a physicist the other day said that there's not only billions of planets in our galaxy, 200 billion suns, but there's billions of galaxies, billions of galaxies. So here we are living in something incomprehensible, created by a superior reasoning power, and we think like that. I know I don't. Maybe you do. Ben Franklin once said that if you're tightly wrapped up into a small bundle, a person wrapped up in themselves, it could be a society wrapped up in themselves, makes a very small bundle. But a person wrapped up in themselves makes a very small bundle. But think about the whole groups of people that are in tightly wrapped bundles, small-minded thinkers. Scientists during COVID made whole groups of other scientists who disagreed with them wrong. Hollywood actors and actresses, professional athletes, politicians, journalists, well, really commentators on cable news, especially making whole groups of people wrong. And of course, we are listening to it, which is why they're there, because we're looking for people that agree with us, that won't challenge our thinking. And then those that disagree with us, we just rail against them on social media. Such a waste of time. We have college professors, high school teachers, universities making whole groups of people who disagree with them wrong, creating safe spaces to protect people from people who disagree with them. Higher education, the whole idea of it was to take a narrow mind and turn it into an open mind. But let's take politics. We've got in this country a two-party system which no longer serves us. Crazy. We have our leaders on either side getting up and making the other side wrong, standing up to say how they're right, when their job is to compromise and negotiate and to solve the ills and the challenges in society. That takes compromise. And Bill Clinton was a great example of compromise. He figured it out. There have been other politicians over time that have been good negotiators, found a way, because they didn't expect everyone to agree with them. And this is not a dictatorship or an authoritarian government, my way or the highway. It's It's not. We can see how those societies work. Don't disagree with anyone in Russia or China or Venezuela. They're not healthy. Expecting the masses to blindly follow anything didn't work well in history, and it doesn't serve us today. And our job is to overcome what I call this small-minded thinker that resides in all of us, the acorn brain, the small-minded thinker. And we shouldn't fear anything, right? People who use fear to make one side wrong versus the other, that's a way to manipulate others. That's where we need to stand up as citizens and say, wait a minute, that's not rational, a rational argument. You're using fear. What is the basis for your argument? What are the facts? Just give us that as a populace and let us decide. The average person has more common sense than most of our politicians, certainly most of our journalists who are no longer journalists, they're reporting to fit a narrative. Our college professors and high school teachers who bring their own politics or their own thinking into the classroom. It's outrageous. Imagine paying for that kind of an education that brings you out more narrow-minded than when you went in. Wow. I can tell you that on the other side, in what's next, there's only a what's next. There is no death. We shouldn't call death death. You know I say that because on November 18th, after 5 days in intensive care, I flatlined. I was on the other side immediately. There was not even a veil. There was 1 second and the next second. Not even a second, probably. And on the other side, there was none of this small-minded thinking. We don't think like God, and God does not think like us. That superior reasoning power that created an incomprehensible universe doesn't think in terms of races or sexes or sexual preference or sin or political parties or the way to govern. Those are our jobs here. And look at all our leaders and all the elitist people who are using small-minded thinking, trying to convince us to follow one way or the other. How'd that work out for the people who followed Jim Jones or Hitler or Mussolini or any of the small-minded thinkers in history? Our job is to work on ourselves. My journey is my business. Your journey is none of my business. And I can tell you that all the writings about sin and burning in hell forever, if it sounds small-minded, it's not. It's not created by a superior reasoning power that created an incomprehensible universe. It's human. It's small-minded. It's what I call the acorn brain. But you have to prove that to yourself. Don't take my word for it. Work on questioning your answers. As Osho said in his book, Your Answers Questioned. Come up with a new approach to life if you notice you're tightly wrapped. That you're wrapped up in yourself and in your thinking and you're searching out and seeking only people that agree with you. Wow. How small-minded is that? I mean, think about even religions have been fighting for years, and some are the same religion, just different sects. Not different sexes, but even different sexes are fighting. And people are judging other people for their choices of a life partner or their sexual preference. It's none of your business. And it's not God's business. I don't care what you think. You're going to figure that out and find out about it when you get to the other side. I hope it's not before this podcast ends. As I say in every episode, you will learn just how small-minded thinking if you come back. But once you're on the other side, none of the small-minded thinking goes with you. There's no past or no future. There's only the now. That's what helped me discover back in my body, back in intensive care, that the divine, whatever we call it, is in the now. That superior reasoning power is in everything that comes in our life. Like Muhammad said, what reaches you is meant for you. What misses wasn't. Or like Christ said, that everything works together for good, but that requires infinite thinking, looking at life as a gift and feedback, and as the divine guiding you. And that goes against our little acorn brain. But there's a purpose for the acorn brain. That small-minded thinker, it's for us to observe it and overcome it and stretch and grow. Will you? Will you take that challenge? Will you stop railing against people who disagree with you? Will you stop spending time railing against people on social media, whatever form you choose, whatever is your favorite? Will you encourage your political leaders to stop making people wrong and take accountability for their own failures and start to negotiate and compromise? I mean, 28% of people approve of Congress right now. It's no wonder why. Both parties just get up and make the other wrong. But that kind of thinking anywhere in life is not what comes from a superior reasoning power. It's not what is like a superior reasoning power. It's not how God thinks. But you can still believe your thinking and still rail against people who disagree with you, rail against different races. There were no races, no sexes, no nationalities, no political preferences, no sexual preferences, no sexes on the other side. All is one. And like I said, only the now. So I was in my body 1 second in intensive care. The next second, I was one with everything and nothing. It'll be 20 years, November 18th this year. Then there was a life review, only the good I had done, the lives I had touched, family, friends, people I had shared a sandwich with, bought a sandwich for, smiled at, given money to, whatever good I had done. And then I was asked a question, stay or go. And my consciousness responded, and I'm embarrassed to say I was 50 at the time, like no other time. I was just in the moment. Thy will be done was my response. My consciousness responded with that. Either way, I was grateful if I stayed there and grateful if I came back. And once I was back in my intensive care, my very sick body, all those small-minded thoughts came back. So I got the chance to compare. And that darkest moment became my calling. And that's what I coach my clients on, to watch for all those events they rail against in their life, that they think stung them, that they feel like a victim, that things didn't work out. It's pushing them and moving them to their calling. It's life itself, the divine God urging you to grow and use what you're given. Use the race you were born in, like Rosa Parks, like Martin Luther King. Use the country you were born in, like Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa, to do good and still be okay as an imperfect human, because they all made mistakes. But embrace the path you've been given. You've been giving it to find your calling and to uplift those around you. It's funny how many elitists want to take away all the challenges from every racial group, from every sex, from every challenged group, sexual preferences, whatever it is. Take them away, relieve them of it. That would be relieving them of their opportunity to achieve something, to overcome something, to lead others in a remarkable way, like some of those people I mentioned. You have an opportunity to achieve something. Life is giving you a gift. The divine is never absent. It's in the now. You don't have to go searching for it. But when it doesn't fit your picture the most, that's the most important moment of the divine trying to reach you, wake you up. Like I say in my book, Wake Up, Jump Into Your Life, available on Amazon if you're interested. Never follow anyone or anything blindly. Step up and challenge those around you to grow beyond their small-minded thinking, that acorn brain. Any questions? I'm glad to have you on the podcast. You can challenge me. You can email me, steve@stevelentini.com, steve@stevelentini.com. I'm glad to have a dialogue. I'm glad to have you challenge me. I might ask you, does that sound like small-minded thinking? Thanks.